Hi, it's Therese for ellenhutson.com. Welcome to Hello Monday. I've got big shoes to fill today. I'm standing in for Julie Ebersole, and what I thought I'd do is actually share 3 different cards using the same stamp set, doing watercolouring as a technique, but just showing you how different watercolours and styles of card making can look. So each card has the same stamp set for the image, which is this beautiful Mondo Wildflowers set from Brandy. It's a newer stamp set, and it has a set of coordinating dies as well, and I'll be using those a bit later on. And I have used similar colours throughout so that it makes it better for you to compare. Okay, I'm starting with my Gansai Tambi, and I'm using some Arches watercolor cardstock. So this does have a fairly rough, it's not the roughest one, but I think it's the medium one. So it does have a rough surface, and I did stamp it out in my Misty using some jet black archival ink, and it doesn't stamp particularly well, but that's okay. I'll show you how to fix that a little bit later on. I'm mostly using the wet to wet technique, so I'm taking some clean water, dropping it on my image, picking up some of my paints, which I have actually transferred across to my palette, and I'm working from my palette, and that way I can mix my colours on my palette and I can see exactly what I'm using, and I'm not going to contaminate my pans of colour, which is something that I struggle with. I know if I really want the full depth of the colour, I will actually pick the colour up directly off the pan, but I don't like having messy paints. Is that that's weird. I know that's kind of weird, but anyway, it's a thing I have, and it's a bridge I need to build. But what I did decide to do, because this is a watercolour cardstock, it is fairly yellow compared to the white cardstocks that I'm going to use on my card base. So I just did a wash of colour around the edge, waited for it to dry, and then dropped in another colour. And then once my panel was dry, I came back in and re-stamped over top of the image, because I had initially stamped it with my Mini Misty, and I used some Onyx Black ink and actually came in with a marker pen and drew in the lines that weren't stamping beautifully because of the rough surface of the paper. I've die cut a window out of a piece of white cardstock that's the same size as the front of my top fold card, and added some fun foam behind that. And then, because this is watercolour cardstock, I'm using some Be Creative tape, and I just pull back each corner, put some pressure on the sticky edges of the corners when they're dry, and then I can just press down. I know that my panel's going to be in exactly the right spot. I've added a sentiment here from the Pure Magic stamp set, and it's heat embossed on some pink cardstock. I've also added some sequins today to all of my cards, and this is a beautiful sparkling clear mix. So I'm on to my second card now, and this one I'm going to be doing my colouring with some Altenew watercolour brush markers, and I've heat embossed the image onto a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, and the heat embossing just makes this process so much quicker, because I don't have to worry about cross-contamination of my colours. I don't have to wait for one to dry next to another one, and the well of the heat embossing kind of holds it in place. So what I like to do is add my colours. I'll often add a couple of colours direct onto the paper, and then add my water from my aqua brush. I'll also pick up water from the well with the aqua brush if I want it to be a little bit more washy. When the colour's dried, I can actually add more depth by adding extra colour on top. And again, I can wait for more to dry and add more on top. I can do direct to paper with these brushes. I find they're really easy to use, and they're very forgiving and fun. But the real trick with these brushes is to make sure that you're using a cardstock like the Bristol Smooth. The colour just doesn't move as nicely on a lot of the other watercolour cardstocks. So if you have got a brush like this and you are having trouble with it, I suggest that you invest in some Bristol Smooth, and you might find that your love for these brushes will return. I did add some shading with the brown on a couple of the flowers, and I coloured 4 of these, yes. And aren't they all pretty? I didn't make you sit through all 4. And then I just use the coordinating die to cut them all out. And my cardstock here that I'm using is more Bristol Smooth because I want it to match my other cardstock. And I stamped a sentiment with some Catherine Pooler icing on the cake ink, and that sentiment comes from the Crafty Ladies Say. I want these flowers to make a border all the way around the sentiment. So I simply just used some pop dots, placed all my flowers around the panel with those so that they all sat up off the card front, and filled in the gaps with the leftover cut off pieces and added some sequins. This card makes me really happy. Alright, my final card today. So I decided to do some no line colouring. I mean, we call it no line colouring, but it's not really no lines because there are lines. And this is my first time that I've tried using this ink. It's new to me. It's called Ink on 3 Fade Out ink, and I'm painting away this time using my Distress inks. I'm waiting for this ink to fade. I probably should have read the instructions, but I didn't. The ink actually doesn't fade, FYI. It actually changes colour. Well, I don't know if it changes colour. It takes up the colour. So when you add colour to your images, it looks like you've no-lined coloured because as you add the colour over the ink, it takes on the colour. How brilliant is that? So it doesn't fade. But it looks amazing and it's really easy to use. And it's waterproof too, but you can use it with lots of different mediums. But I was really excited when I saw it was waterproof. Mine was probably a bit dark in a few places. I'm wondering if I had a bit of the black ink left from the Onyx Black on my stamp. But I think it worked out pretty in the end. Now I did decide to watercolour with the Distress inks today because you guys already have these in your stash. They are a really easy medium to use. A few tricks to treat them as you would any other paint. Don't paint directly next to another wet area. You need to be patient and wait for it to dry in between areas. I find that is the hardest part of watercolouring for me, and I love that I can actually mix these colours to create new colours if I want, just like you do with any of the watercolours. And there's such a great variety of colours already. So if you're not happy to try mixing and get your own colours, we already know what our Distress ink colours are. We've been using these things for years. You'll be able to grab them out and picture the colour straight away. But I did have to come in with some darker colours here because all of my images today are quite bright. And I did decide to come in with the darker colours to add some shading after everything had dried. And also some of the fine details. So I'm using my silver brush here. I think this is the size 4, and just adding the details of the stamens of the flower and the centre of the flowers as well. So all these flowers, they're all similar colours over the day. I can't believe it. And do you know what else I found out today? A sentiment stamp will fit through your Gemini Junior. Who would have thought? I decided to flatten out my piece of cardstock. It was a little bit warped after painting it with the Distress inks. I probably didn't even need to. But look at that. It creased the paper. So to fix that, I just ran that through my Gemini Junior a few more times, just with some shims of paper. And I think I saved it, but that's actually where my sentiment went. And a sequin. There is some tiny cracks in the paper, but no one will ever know. And I added some sequins here as well. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Hello Monday. I certainly have had a blast bringing you these 3 cards. It's different kinds of watercolouring, and I hope you go out and have some fun and try this technique for yourself. And don't forget, all the links are going to be below to the Ellen Hutson classroom, as well as a list of all the products that have been used here today. Till next time, bye.